Hey everybody, welcome to 3D6 Charge, a podcast about competitive Warhammer 40k, the state of the game and community news. We're streaming live at Twitch/3D6 Charge every Monday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. We're also anywhere that you can find podcasts such as Spotify or iTunes. This is episode 52, ORKS. I am your host, Chris Vo, and joining me tonight is Benjamin Rubenstein.
Hey everyone.
And Rob, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Rob Beeble, and I am kind of the local/resident orc player, here to talk about orcs.
Yep, and if there's anything we know about orc players is that they are orc players through and through.
Absolutely.
Yep. So we got a couple things on the docket tonight. First off, we have an event that we want to announce. Is that right, Ben?
Yeah. So it's if you are friends with me on Facebook, you've already seen me talk about this. But the game club I'm part of, South County Game Nights, is doing a partners event, doubles event. We've done one in the past. It's pretty popular. People really enjoyed it. We were planning on making a whole deal out of it. And then COVID happened and we couldn't run one for you. But with things opening back up, vaccines are out, restrictions are lifting, we're going to run another one. So we've cleverly named it South County Game Nights Team Tournament 2. It's August 7th. It's going to be actually at our clubhouse. There's going to be the mission packet is going to be somewhere in the show notes. So feel free to go ahead and look at that, and all the info's in there. It's just a pretty casual doubles event. We're not doing a painting requirement or anything like that. And just to go with our topic of orcs, the new orc codex will be legal if you have access to it. If you don't have, one of the 4 beast snag boxes that were made on the planet, we're also going to allow teams to play the old orc codex if that's all they have access to. But not both.
Why not, Ben?
Yeah.
Is there an advantage to using both?
Yeah, so I'll be the TO, so feel free to message me if you have any questions. Should be a good time. Doubles are always fun.
It's always a good time. It's since you're playing doubles, it's always just like, hey, grab a friend and just start rolling dice, But yeah, I wish I could go. I'm just it's the 7th, so I can't. I'm busy.
Such is life.
I will be there playing orcs for you, Ben.
All right, thanks. I'm glad. And one last thing, there will be a small FAQ for the Orc Codex because the Orc Codex will not be fully FAQ'd by then. There's a couple of things that don't work, and 1 or 2 things that need to get FAQ'd. Although actually, on the I don't know, Drakari to Sisters spectrum of 9th edition codexes, orcs are a lot closer to Sisters. There's couple things that don't work, and there's nothing that's just super egregious and needs to get fixed, which is good. And I actually think it was a pretty well written codex.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into it and get talking about it. Before we do that, let's talk about the Lone Star Open. So Lone Star Open, if you guys don't know, it's one of Frontline Gaming's marquee events, obviously in Texas. And we had an interesting, not just top 4, but I want to say an interesting top 10.
Mm-hmm. Much less AdMech than we're used to seeing.
Yes.
And that is almost assuredly because of player place terrain. When players get to place their own terrain, you get these big L's of obscuring runes that can just hide entire armies because they're going to take all their obscuring stuff and just jam it around their objectives. Which sometimes they get trickier with that. More combat armies are going to put their terrain a bit further up so they can charge out of it. And shooty armies are going to try and have places where the characters can hide and then grant auras to things sitting outside of it. But player-based terrain lets you basically have perfect terrain against AdMech. And AdMech, which is a primarily, shoot you off the table sort of list, can suffer a bit from player-based terrain when their opponent has all the perfect cover. Which isn't bad or good. In this particular case, I think it's very good. Because with AdMech being the boogeyman list, I think the win is a lot healthier when you can just always have your terrain in the right place to hide from them.
Yeah. Do you know how the player place terrain work? I've read conflicting reports, but from what I understand, people were like picking terrain pieces into like halves, and then like you would see like who wanted what half of the terrain, and then you alternate placing
unlike
it.
most events that did player-based terrain, players would decide deployment zones and then place terrain. So you knew what the deployment zones were. So you actually, I believe, could not put terrain in your opponent's deployment zone. And some amount of terrain had to go in the center. I don't know the exact rules, but I know that people were putting terrain. They were the only person in charge of terrain in their own deployment zone. And there was something going on with the middle, which I actually didn't quite look into. But the big one there is, of course, you get to decide your own deployment zone.
Right, but and there was like some considerations on X amount of inches between terrain pieces, so you couldn't just like make like a solid wall.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I don't want to asterisk the results of this event.
I do.
But
I do.
I want to.
So the winning sisters list was pretty heavily, or sorry, did sisters? I watched the last game. Sisters won, right? Or was it Eldar?
It was Eldar. Sean Naden.
Oh, Eldar won. Okay. The sisters list that got second place.
Second was Admech. Sisters made it to sixth place with John Lennon.
Sisters lost on the top table and got bumped to third. In my mind, that makes them second, quote unquote. But yeah, that's fair. Sisters got third, Admech got second. But the sisters list was designed with 100% with these rules in mind, because it brought the sisters fortification, which is unplayable because it's huge. The sisters fortification is like you like it takes up like, I don't know, a third of a table quarter. It's like over a foot wide and has the obscuring keyword now. It's just like absolutely gigantic. You can never put it on a table. If you can't put it on a table, that table is not good. But with player place terrain, you can just like jam all of your terrain in one corner and then take a second corner with a huge obscuring piece in it, which is really good because you get way more terrain in your deployment zone than your opponent does when you're bringing that thing.
Yep.
Then it generates an extra miracle die for you every turn, so you get way more miracle dice than your opponent than normal. And then if you have more miracle dice, all of a sudden, Ebon Chalice, which is the faction that you can discard extra miracle dice to pretend they're all sixes, becomes playable. So that sisters list brought Ebon Chalice, which is generally not great. They have really good warlord trait, which is your first miracle die is a 6, and they get extra command points. I believe it's command point refund on a 6-up. But other than that, like the trait being like you get 2 sacred rights and you can discard extra dice is like to be 6s is like fine. But then when you're like, oh, I have an extra miracle die every turn, all of a sudden the trait starts getting really interesting. So that's just list of like, I don't think anyone would want to play Ebon Chalice outside of that, and also of course having the extra like huge line of sight blocking terrain piece in your deployment zone is like a big boost to sisters in that tournament.
Yeah, because that fortification is like, I think it has like a square foot like footprint.
Oh yeah, it's huge. And it has a bunch of keywords. I believe it's inspiring to sisters, so you get extra leadership around it if you care about that. And then it's also, it's obscuring, which is the big one, but it also gives you, it's also defensible. It's also light cover. Like it's really good.
Yeah.
And then the Eldar list that won is worth talking about only because Eldar won, which is fun, right? And it's an Eldar list that, I don't know, have you looked at the list, Chris? It was unbelievably skewed to beat Admech. Like the entire list was just like, does this beat Admech? Does this beat Admech? Which is right. I mean, Admech's really good, so that makes sense. So it was, I'm not going to do the whole list, but the highlights were triple 3-man Dark Reaper squads with Tempest Launchers. Tempest Launchers are 2d6 shots with Blast. He took as his Exarch power 6 extra inches of range. So basically, they're shooting the table 42 inches. Against Admech, that's 12 shots at 4 and 2-1. Then he took 3 support weapons with the out of line of sight support weapon.
Yeah, the Shadow Weaver.
Took the Shadow Weaver support weapon. And then he also brought an actual Night Weaver, which is like the tank that has the indirect fire. It's also multi-damage, so it's not triggering the Lucius +1 on saves thing. And then he took, of course, ignore cover on his whole army because everyone gets to put their own terrain down. Trade's gonna be in places that are good. People are gonna have cover more often than not. Also, that trade's just excellent. And then reroll 1 hit and 1 wound per squad, which again, sticking a bunch of MSU and direct fire, so great. So yeah, that was just like, oh, and then there was also like a small Harlequin attachment of a transport that can move.
Yeah, it was 2 Star Weavers, a bunch of Fusion Pistol players, and then like a Death Jester and Troop Master.
Yeah, so the standout there is that Troop Master is actually the Warlord, and his abilities he can get out of a transport after it moves and still charge. And those transports, I believe, auto advance 6. So like those things can go like 22 inches, and then he gets out moving 8 plus D6, and then charges. So he can charge in turn 1. Like he just goes. So yeah, it was really cool. It was a really cool Eldari list, and AdMech feels more beatable than Dark Eldar when you skew hard against them. Which is good. It's not great. There are some factions that just like can't skew against them, like GW. Please fix the problem. But at least we are starting to see the meta self-correcting, and people just bringing lists are just like, all right, people are just bringing AdMech. Like, here's a bunch of blast weapons, I guess. And it does do the thing. Although actually, I believe Sean Dayton, who's playing the Elder list, just like actually never played against AdMech or played against AdMech like one time. Which is kind of funny, but the list is obviously also good against not AdMech. It's a bunch of indirect fire and MSU stuff, which is cool.
Yeah. The White Scars list that came in 4th place, played by Oliver Smith. I think this list was skewing pretty hard against AdMech as well.
Yeah.
Like he took 3 Volkite Contemptors.
Yup.
And then just like a shitload of Vanguard vets with shields and lightning claws, and then 2 Devastator squads with just multi-meltas for presumably like
the chicken walkers.
Yeah, the chicken walkers, and and then like a couple of land speeder storms, which they're just good utility pieces for objectives.
Yeah, and those storm shields on those Vanguard vets are actually super important. Because if you don't have them and you just charge into like a Vanguard squad, they'll make you fight last, and you'll lose like they don't have any armor penetration, but like they'll just like bury you under your weight of attacks, and also your toughness 3 now because you're next to Vanguards, you lose toughness. But when you push yourself back up to 2 up, all of a sudden the fight into you thing first doesn't really matter as much, and you can go back and just like trouncing AdMech and melee.
Yeah. What other interesting lists that we saw? I want to give a shout out to Wyatt Turk, who came in 9th place, but did it with pure Iron Warriors.
Yes, Iron Warriors, let's go.
Yeah, so it's interesting because he spent 6 CP to take 2 Khorne Lord of Skulls and 2 separate detachments. So that's a big ass right there. And then on top of that, he took a Contemptor, which is another minus CP.
Keep in mind, I believe it's only 1 to bring a Lord of War if it shares a faction with your Warlord.
They're super heavy auxiliaries, though.
Right, but that detachment its cost got reduced down to 1.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was changed in the Grand Tournament 2021 package.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I see it now. The shared faction bonus. So he was at minus 4 CP for those 2 detachments, minus 1 for another Contemptor. But he brought like a Disco Lord, which haven't seen one of those in a long time. Took the Demon Smith Warlord trait, which is like the only good one for Iron Warriors.
It's like double hit for Demon Engines.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so those Lords of Skull are kind of doing the same thing that the Eldar list I was just talking about are doing, where like you look at these like AdMech blobs and you go, every weapon on this thing is like 3d6 with blast, and all of a sudden you're just picking up entire AdMech squads on its own. And they're also all AP2. Iron Warriors can spend a command point to increase their armor penetration, if I remember correctly. No, I apologize. It's spent a command point to ignore armor penetration. But like, yeah, it's just like going to pick up entire squads of AdMech because like, everything just has a million attacks with blast. And also when you go, you can only move in 4 as well. It can just reroll all of its wound rolls, which like kind of mitigates the whole like cutting half, rather than cutting half the damage off of it, you're only cutting a quarter of the damage off of it, and you're spending more CP than they are. So.
Yep. And then the other interesting pick here, he brought like 6 possessed, and possessed are they're not the threat that they were, but they're okay. But
they're just like kind of tough for their point costs.
Yeah, I mean, but like, the real interesting pick here is the Land Raider Achilles, which again, it's trying to target AdMech, trying to with the all the multi-meltas on it, just trying to kill chicken walkers.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, so those are open was cool. It was neat to see player place terrain. It's not the most popular thing in most events. Partly because it can be a little time consuming, and also it's even more skewing of like skill. Like you can really give yourself non-games by like messing up where you put your terrain. Yeah, it's cool. The big thing was I just wanted to talk about that Sisters list because the Sisters list was really cool. When you like look at player-based terrain, you're like, oh, well, I can actually play the Sanctum. Yeah, I can play the Sanctum. What else can I do? So I was doing cool stuff, and then that Eldar list is sweet. It speaks to me. I don't play Eldar, but I have a friend who really likes Eldar. He took one look at this and says, I own that list. I kind of want to go back and play my Eldar now, which is great because he's sort of been like discouraged from playing Eldar because, they're not great right now. They can be if you're like truly excellent with them, but it's cool that you can like still find things with them that play well into the meta. But speaking of the meta and how it will never be the same again, shall we move on to ORKS?
Yeah, let's move on to the ORKS. So new ORK Codex came out, sort of. I don't know when the wider release is, probably like in a couple of weeks.
It's probably going to be about 2, maybe 3.
You can currently... Yeah, so go ahead, Rob.
Oh, yeah, it's one of those things where they said within a few weeks, most of the rumors that I've been hearing were 2 to 3 from the box. So, middle to end of August, you should be seeing it on shelves. Now, with that being said, though, at one point about a week before the box came out, GW did make the mistake of putting pretty much the entire codex up on their app for free. Now, it was only up for maybe an hour or two, but most people were able to snag screenshots of it. You can find most of the screenshots on the internet if you look for them. I was one of the lucky few that did happen to have a box set aside for me, so I do have the codex in my hands. But it's definitely going to change some things. I think probably, yeah.
Let's
do we want to talk about general changes first?
Yeah, let's talk about general changes like to the codex.
All right. So probably the biggest general change to the codex is DACA is gone as an army-wide rule. It has been replaced. Yeah, yes, it is good. It speeds up things because we're not rolling all the extra dice. It really wasn't giving us that much more efficiency. Now it's been replaced with DACA weapons. So DACA weapons are a new category of weapons. They have 2 profiles. One is going to be the amount of shots that they get within half range, and the other is going to be their full range of shots. For example, your Shudas are now DACA 3-2. So at half range, they are going to be getting 3 shots, full range 2 shots. And this carries out across all DACA weapons. So they function somewhat like rapid fire, though they do have a set value. And this is mostly because of the fact that you really couldn't put some of the numbers down that they put down for the shots on these weapons if they were just true rapid fire.
So the way it ends up being is like it's like a rapid fire weapon that's a little bit better outside of half range than normal, is the way I think of it.
That's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, there's like a couple rules that interact with DACA weapons, but for the most part, that's what they do. They run the gamut. There's heavy one, or I mean heavy quote. They're all DACA weapons, but there's ones that are like these ones you point at tanks, and then there's these ones you point at infantry. Mostly they're leaned on the infantry side, but there's there's these like Ludas that have like basically autocannon. It's not DACA weapons, and
they are DACA autocannons.
Yeah. All right. So our next big change to ORKS, and we're not going to necessarily go over every single thing in the book.
Right.
Oh God, no.
So if there's tons of
There's a
YouTube
lot.
reviews out of the book, so feel free to go ahead and look at those. We're mostly going to talk about how we feel these things affect like competitive play. DACA weapons, I mean, like they're just numbers. It's just like a different way of doing numbers, but we do need to talk about them because when we cut to some of the data sheets later, they have DACA weapons on them, so now you know what to do. The other change is that every infantry orc model just like went up a toughness. Boys are just toughness 5 now. Grots are toughness 3. More importantly, everything that was based off of a boy, toughness 5.
The exception being war bikers, but they already had an extra pip of toughness, so that was fine.
Yep. This just like wildly changes the math of killing boys. Amusingly, this doesn't really affect guard at all. Like, so guard, you kill orcs just as fast as you ever did. But Space Marines are gonna start looking at orcs and just be like, wow, we just like don't kill them at the rate that we used to. And like I can't like iterate enough. That's just like that's just gonna be like a thing that people have to get used to. It's also like huge for Dark Eldar. Like now when witches go into boys, you have to spend 2 CP to reroll all your things, or you just bounce. Like you make 30 attacks, like okay, you wound on 5s. You're just not gonna kill that many of them. And if you miss like, and they're still boys, they still make approximately 1 million attacks a model. So if you miss like 4 of them, they're gonna kill all the witches.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna let Rob cover this next change, but which is or rather new thing, which is the WAAAAGH special rule. But the WAAAAGH special rule kind of brings me to the Orc Codex, the Chaos Codex, and by that I mean they tie a lot to your warlord. We're gonna see over and over where they go thing, but only if it's your warlord. So that's gonna be this rule is attached to your warlord. And when we get to factions, we'll talk about how they did some weird things with warlords as well. So go ahead, Rob. What's the WAAAAGH look like these days?
Basically, what they did is they cut out the ability for advance and charge from war bosses. So you're no longer going to have those running into your face. In exchange, they gave us the WAAAAGH. The WAAAAGH is broken down into a WAAAAGH or a speed WAAAAGH or a great WAAAAGH. In order to call a WAAAAGH, you do it in your command phase. Your warlord has to call it, and your warlord determines whether it's going to be a WAAAAGH or a speed WAAAAGH, unless your warlord is Gaz, in which case he calls the great WAAAAGH, which gives you the benefit of both the WAAAAGH and the speed WAAAAGH. Your warlord has to be on the table. Your warlord has to be or in a transport. That's the other condition. So with a WAAAAGH, if you call a standard WAAAAGH, that's going to be all of your war boss, your beast boss, your war boss in mega armor.
It's just like every boss is not on a bike.
Every boss except for the Death Killer War Trike and the war boss on war bike, which is out of Imperial armor.
Yeah.
So when they call it, the first turn, Orc core and character units are eligible to declare a charge even if they advanced. So that's where you get your advance and charge. In addition, they get +1 attack for every orc model in your army. So that includes your vehicles, everything. The next turn, the WAAAAGH is still active, and they're still getting the bonus to their attacks, but they're not advancing and charging, which is fine. You don't need that the second turn. The speed WAAAAGH functions a little bit differently. So orc models don't suffer the penalty for advancing and firing assault weapons. Additionally, orc vehicles and bikers get 1 extra attack with each of their DACA weapons. So in the case of war bikers that have 2 DACA weapons, they're getting 2 extra shots. In addition to those benefits, each time a vehicle or a biker makes a ranged attack, you improve the armor penetration characteristic of their weapons by 1. Now, that isn't DACA weapons. That is all their weapons.
Interesting.
That's every vehicle and bike in your army. That's a lot of extra armor penetration. So like, and then what's the second round?
So the second round of it is getting the extra armor penetration.
Yep.
So basically, the WAAAAGH and the speed WAAAGH, your second round is just the second bullet point within the WAAAGH or the speed WAAAGH.
Yep. So of a note with the speed WAAAGH, almost every single assault weapon in the army either got changed to DACA or heavy. So when they say you ignore the penalties for moving and shoot assault weapons, I believe they just mean custom mega blasters. And I was like,
there's a few other weapons
few
here and there, but yeah, it's a small number that you're getting it for. So that's fine. But it does apply to all orc models, not just vehicles, for that advanced in firing assault weapons.
Yeah.
So there are some foot sloggers that are going to benefit from that. Like your BOYZ, they're going to definitely get a benefit off of that.
Well,
now that they've been bumped up,
take a penalty to hit though, right? Because it's a flamer weapon.
Right. But yeah, so there are some things like that while in theory they're going to get it, a lot of these boosts don't actually help.
The big one's just AP. Like everyone gets AP.
That's the thing.
What if you're playing Space Marines, but they could just pick 2 turns of the game for all of the weapons to get extra armor penetration instead of like, oh, some now, some later. Just like, no, all of them at once, right now, when they want it. We've already, we tried one game with this codex already, and man, there's a lot of armor penetration in the shooting.
Yeah,
there's a lot.
And
then the last note is
good.
Yeah, and the last note is Gaz. He just does both. When he calls the WAAAAGH, you get all 4 abilities on the first turn, and then just like the secondary effects on the second turn of both.
Yep.
And
again, as long as your warlord is on the table or in a transport, you're going to be able to call it.
Yep. Which also means you're deciding what kind of WAAAAGH you're calling when you build your list. So
yes,
like you can't be like, oh, I want a normal WAAAAGH. It's like, oh, too bad your warlord's in a bike.
So it's declared on your list then?
Well, but it's because only your warlord can call it. So bikes call speed WAAAGHs and not bikes call normal WAAAGHs, and that's it. Like there's no, like a biker can't call a normal WAAAGH. He has to call a speed WAAAGH.
So what this basically means is you're going to see a lot of lists running Gaz as their warlord in a Supreme Command attachment, since he can call both.
Yeah, he picked up the Supreme Command keyword. Because, I mean, we've seen orc vehicles, they shoot and they fight. They kind of like both. They like having extra armor penetration and an extra attack. Like, that's good for them.
Yeah.
So next up, custom jobs are back. They are no longer command points, just like everyone knew they would be. Now they're just points. Couple things. We're gonna get to this later, but the buggies and actually several other orc vehicles no longer split into individual units. They stay together. And custom jobs you can't put them on multi-model units. You have to put them on single model units. For the most part, these just are not good. There's a couple ones that are interesting.
I would say that there's maybe 2 from the list that I would take with any sense of regularity. Maybe another 1 that would be in a specialist list. But overall, you're de-incentivized to take them the way that you were with Psychic Awakening.
Yeah. That being said, there's a couple that are neat. We'll talk about them when we get to the vehicles that they're like interesting on. Also there's a list of them that can go on mechs.
Yes.
Most of those are not interesting, except for the one that goes on shock attack guns that changes it from 1d6 to 2d3. It's only 15 points, and I'm pretty sure you're supposed to take it every time. Seems great.
I believe that you do. It changes the shock attack gun from heavy d6 to a heavy 2d3. Guaranteeing that you're not going to get only 1 shot with it, which is a big deal for the shock attack gun.
Yeah, it brings your average, brings your variance way closer to average.
Right. There is one that gives you an extra shot with your custom Mega Blastas. As it stands right now, it's already out in the world. Since there isn't a restriction on these, people might end up taking them on a Death Dread. But expect that to be FAQ'd real fast, because that is not how it was intended.
Yeah, of course. All right, and then we got I believe specialist mobs.
Specialist mobs, yep. These use the same name as the specialist mobs that we saw in Psychic Awakening. They have been changed. So it's no longer a full detachment. Instead, you pick one eligible unit in each of your detachments to be nominated as a specialist mob, and they replace their clan keyword with the keyword of their specialist mob. Of these, there's a few of them that are pretty good.
All of them are like whatever. But
Yeah.
all right, so real quick, the ones that are like fine. I'm gonna let Rob do the great one. Are Fly Boys, which is a flyer, has light cover outside of 6 inches. It's like
it is flyers and Def Coptas.
Yes, Def Coptas can take it too. I think it's fine. Orbital gets you can pick a Grot unit. It gets OBSEC. Grots have lost OBSEC naturally. As a lot of our like pathetic quote unquote infantry we are seeing like cultists and such have lost OBSEC. Well, Grots lost OBSEC, but you can get it back with a specialist mob. So there's something no other mob you want in your list. You can just like give a unit of Grots OBSEC back, and like it's fine. They also penalize hit rolls and shooting within 3 inches of themselves, and this also affects your own unit. So like it's gonna be like a little careful with how you place them, but that's more flavor text than anything else. The other one that's like pretty interesting is Pyromaniacs, which is basically for Burna Boys who are like the flamethrower unit. It basically puts a floor on all their guns. All their 1s and 2s are treated as 3s when they're determining how many shots they get. So it like way ups the average number of shots they get because like they can go to 15-man squads. Like that's a lot of flamethrowers. And then the last one is Truck Boys.
Yeah,
what are Truck Boys do?
So Truck Boys are great, in theory. So the Truck Boy is any boys.
In a moment.
Yeah. So it's any boys, it's any knobs, or any war boss that could be nominated for this. They are able to disembark from a truck after it has made a normal move, and it has no restriction to them charging. So this will get FAQ'd. The problem is that as it stands right now, trucks can't take Truck Boys because they lose their clan keyword, and trucks can only transport clan infantry. So once that's fixed, this will work perfectly. I'm sure most places will let you play it as intended, but you put a unit of boys or a unit of knobs inside of a truck, you make your normal 12-inch move. They disembark, and then they're able to go ahead and charge on in.
Does the truck have to make a normal? Sorry, I didn't interrupt. Does the truck have to make a normal move, or is it allowed to advance?
Yes, the truck cannot advance. So that is your restriction.
They did put a limit on it. That's good.
They did put a limit on it. However, if let's say you're playing Evil Sons, it's going to be moving an extra inch natively. You can put squig hide tires on it, because while the custom jobs are restricted from going on specialist mobs, the truck does not become a specialist mob. It still stays your clan. Which means that it can get the squig hide tires. So, 14 inches isn't quite a good advance, but it is still 14 inches as opposed to 12. So,
if you call WAAAAGH, they can advance out of the truck and then charge.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we're like approaching Gene Stealer charge ranges. Like they're just hitting something.
Yep. Yeah, because you have to factor with the truck move, disembark, and normal move before the advance. That's already a 20-inch move. So that's considerable.
Yep. And this unit again, boys, knobs, or war bosses. They also need to fix some keyword stuff with like knobs. They pluralized it differently.
Yep.
Yeah, they pluralized it in one place and didn't in another. So like technically none of this works, but it's going to get fixed. So basically that could be knobs or mega knobs or a war boss, and we'll talk about war bosses in a bit. And all those units are terrifying to me, really.
They absolutely are. Yeah.
Any questions about any of that, Chris?
What are squig hide tires, and how do I get them for my car?
It's one of our custom jobs. Basically, basically the limitation on it is something with wheels, and it just gives it +2 inches on move. And it is a fine custom job.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's relatively cheap as well. I want to say that it's running you 15 points, so really not a bad upgrade if you've got 15 points to spare. I don't know that I would put it on a truck. There's other things I might put it on, but absolutely one of the look at custom jobs in the book.
All right. So a couple notes before we get onto like cultures and stuff. You are going to see multi-detachment lists. Like more than any other book, like every book that's come out so far, my first attempt has been like, all right, monofaction, like how's it look like if I got all the command points? And like literally Rob and I like tore through this book and we looked at each other and we're just like, every list is at least 2 detachments. And we didn't even try to make a single detachment list.
Right.
Just like every list is 2 detachments.
And the big reason why is because you're limited to 1 boss, war boss, per detachment.
War bosses
are
insane.
Great, and you want to run as many of them as possible, so you will take the CP hit to just keep running them.
I actually think there's a couple other reasons too, like confounding factors. The stratagems in this book are just like fine. There's not a lot of like incredible stratagems. There's a couple of good ones, but I don't look at an orc list and go like, oh yes, I have a plan for all 12 of my command points. It's like, I know how I'm spending 6, maybe.
Yeah, the difference in spending CP on stratagems between the 8th edition codex and the 9th edition codex is worlds apart. The 8th edition codex, you had to plan from the beginning where all of your CP was going, because the army-wide buffs and the unit buffs that came out of stratagems were just absolutely insane. Because of those being toned down, you're freer to spend your CP in other ways now.
Yeah. So, and the other thing is that cultures are really strong now. Like culture specific, like cultures buff specific units really hard. And there's like some units that are just like, this unit is like 30 to 50% better in a specific culture. And you're just really incentivized to like bring multiple war bosses. You're really incentivized to bring certain units in certain places. And it's not like you're giving very much up, because again, 2 CP, like the strats are fine. Let me just hit on a couple strats that I think are worth talking about.
Sure.
So Cloud of Smoke. That's a stratagem for basically you pick a buggy unit, and it's 2 command points. The buggy unit is -1 to hit, and other speed freaks within 6 inches are -1 to hit. Is it? I think it's speed freaks vehicles, right?
So yes, you select a speed freaks vehicle, and then any speed freak vehicle within 6 inches of it are -1 to hit.
Yeah, so it's lightning fast, but in an AoE. You know, great.
Yeah,
you're going to probably
for 2 CP, it's worth popping.
Yeah, you're going to use it once or twice, and at some point you're going to be too split up to be like, have it be worth it. Yeah. And there's a 2 CP to make a custom force field, gain a bigger range, and go to a 5-up invulnerable save. Custom force fields to get nerfed to 6-up, so you can kind of like regain your old glory of being a 5-up for 2 command points. It's fine.
It does have the disadvantage that it does burn out after you use it, though.
Yeah.
So you have to strategically use that one. But by using that stratagem, it's no longer wholly within 9 inches. It is just within. Yeah. So you get quite a pie plate that you can use that with.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Sorry, what was it, Chris?
I was just saying that's interesting.
Yeah. And other than that, some of the clans have great stats, and we'll get to those. So yeah, let's start talking about the actual clans. Right. Okay. So I kind of have them in like 4 categories, which is shooty, fighty, tricky, and death skulls. So let's talk about death skulls first. Death skulls are certainly nerfed from their 8th edition form, because they had 4 abilities, whereas basically every other faction in the game had 1 or 2. And even in 9th edition, most factions are not rocking 4. So they now reroll 1 hit or 1 wound, not both. There's no more damage rerolls. They have a 5-up feel no pain against mortal wounds, and their infantry are still OBSEC. There's no more invulnerable save. This is fine. They obviously, if you're bringing a bunch of MSU, like a bunch of 10-man orc boy squads with like 1 heavy weapon in each squad, or like a bunch of 1-man buggies, or like a bunch of like 5-man infantry squads with 4 deploying or fast movement, so you want to get them all OBSEC, like that's when you're bringing death skulls. They don't necessarily fit into shooty or fighty. They can kind of just do both. Yeah, I don't know. 1 reroll per squad just means like if you're bringing a million small units, death skulls is where you're looking, especially with OBSEC on a million small units. So yeah, I think they're fine. They'll certainly see play. Like having like a bunch of 5-man commandos and storm boys just like flying around with OBSEC is just like a thing that's fine.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the shooty ones. Rob, want to tell us about Bad Moons?
Yeah, so Bad Moons, they've been the traditional shooties for a while. They are going to gain 6 inches of range on their DACA weapons and their heavy weapons. This pans out real good for a lot of units if you're going shooty. In addition, anytime that they roll a 6 to wound, in shooting, they're going to increase the armor penetration by 1.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The unit
so-
that jumps out the most to me from this one is just like boys, shooter boys specifically, because shooters are 18 inches, DACA 3-2. So if you jump them, they cannot jump into rapid or into DACA range, but if they are Bad Moons, they can. So it's like literally just adding more attacks to your unit.
Yep.
And then what is their strat, relic, and warlord trait? Because this is one of the things that's like, because this is the second thing that locks you in.
So when your warlord is declared and you say what clan it is from, that is the only clan specific stratagem and clan specific relic that you are able to take.
Yep.
So regardless of what other detachments you have, you're locked in.
Interestingly, I believe you can still take your clan specific warlord trait on other guys.
Yes, that is strangely not locked. But specifically the relic and the stratagem are locked.
Yeah. So Bad Moon's relic, if I remember correctly, is just like a gun. It's like a Docker gun with a million shots.
It's a 12-inch heavy 2d6, 5 neg 1/1 auto hit. Not terrible, but it's not great. I don't see it being taken. Where they really shine is their stratagem. It's called Showing Off. It's 1 CP. If you are shooting with a core or character unit with a DACA weapon on an unmodified hit roll of a 6, you score 1 additional hit. So it's a better version of the old DACA, specifically for DACA weapons, and only for Bad Moons. So in your super heavy shooty lists, you're gonna see this one played. Most specifically, I think that you're going to be seeing it in a unit like Warbikes, just because of the sheer amount of DACA fire that they already have. Before you call a speed wall, they're already at max size, going to be firing 90 DACA shots, because they're pretty much guaranteed to always be within half range, thus getting their maximum DACA shots. So when you have a 9 model unit putting down 90 shots, all of your 6s scoring additional hits, math says that's a lot of hits.
The other unit that jumps out to me is Ludas, because Ludas have DACA 3-2 autocannons.
Yeah.
And that's just like, man, if you're within, for these guys, it'd be 27 inches.
Right.
15 guys, 13 of which have the DACA gun, be like 39 attacks, 6 is double hitting, and 7 neg 1/2. That's just like, it's a lot of firepower.
That's a lot of DACA.
Yeah, but keep in mind,
and they go up to a max unit of 15. However, Ludas, Burna Boys, and I think it's just Ludas and Burna Boys are required to take a spanner for every 4 non-spanner models. So you're only getting a maximum of 12
guns.
of those Luda guns, but still, when you're talking about 36 shots from autocannons with exploding 6s, that's worth 1 CP in my opinion.
For sure. But keep in mind, if you want to be able to use that, then you're locking your warlord there.
Right.
All right. I'm going to cover freebooters. Freebooters is our other shooty one. Freebooters are real good. So the freebooters trait is whenever a freebooters unit destroys an enemy unit, for the rest of that phase, freebooters in your army have +1 to hit. That's the trait.
That's it, and it's great.
Yeah. The couple things here might need an FAQ. There's no cap on this right now. So as of now, you're like, all right, my freeboot just kills a thing. Okay, my freeboot just kills a thing. Okay, my freeboot is gonna like shoot at your thing in dense cover. I ignore the dense cover, but still a +1 to hit through the dense cover because it's just like you keep stacking the +1s to hit to just like burn through your opponent's penalties. Like this in 9th edition, people aren't stacking -1 to hit as much as they used to be, but like, it's something worth noting. Yeah, freebooters are real good. Obviously they're meta dependent because against, I don't know, if the meta like reverts back to like 8th edition, like 30-man plague bears with a bunch of characters behind them, like you're just like not killing a unit every turn. But the current edition is like very MSU oriented, with the exception of AdMech. But we'll talk about the orc answer to AdMech later, which makes freebooters really good because like everyone's like bringing 5-man squads. You're like, all right, here's like 5 face marines. Okay, shoot like my def guns at them. All right, my whole army gets +1 to hit. Like, whoa. Freebooters have a very good relic and stratagem. That being said, you can probably get away without running them as your warlord detachment because that relic and stratagem are pretty specific to like infantry freebooters, and I don't think that's what you want to be doing. Freebooters strike me as like
the relic can go on a vehicle, so that is something interesting to note. Some of the relics can go onto vehicles, so opportunity.
But anyway, so yeah, the freebooters relic is a 6-inch aura that turns off enemy objectives secured. Great. And the freebooters stratagem is a 1 command point strat that you use at the beginning of your command phase to give a freebooters infantry unit OPSEC. If you're playing mono freebooters, this is great, but I suspect that most freebooters are going to be a contingent of the army that's like a bunch of guns that aren't particularly interested in like getting up on objectives. So while those 2 traits are great and they could certainly see play, I actually suspect you're not going to see a ton of freebooters warlords.
Probably not. I'm planning on running them as a secondary detachment. I think that's where they're really going to shine.
All right. Well, you can't play orcs if you're not going to crump things. So let's talk about our 2 crumpy factions.
Yeah.
And
so I'm going to guess one of them is Goths.
One of them is Goths.
Absolutely. One of them is Goths. How did you guess that, Chris?
I'll start off with Goths. So Goths have a very simple trait, but holy crap. +1 strength on the charge, and 6's double hit in melee. This is way better than the old one.
Charge or heroic intervention.
Oh, fair enough. So yeah, Goths are just like strength 5. Like Goth boys, just strength 5. This makes Goths like 30 to 50% better in melee than like any other clan for most units. It's like it's a heinous amount better. Goths also have Gaz, and Gaz's old +1 attack aura has been replaced with reroll all hit rolls, which is really good for a faction that explodes on 6s. Goths are really good for crumping. They are and they're good for crumping. Like I wrote good for general crumping. Like basically any unit, if it's interested in melee, if you make it Goths, that unit's good now.
Yes. What if you took like the least crumpy shooty unit and made it Goths? Like, I don't know, like Flash Gits. Are they good in melee now?
Of note, Flash Gits used to be locked to freebooters, but are now not. I mean, now like they don't get armor penetration, so it's. But like they're still Flash Gits are knobs, so they're base strength 5, so they go to strength 6. Like it's not bad. But yeah, I mean, like
it's definitely something where you've got a strength 6 model that's got 3 attacks base. It does have a choppa, so that's going to actually be 4 attacks. So AP 4 attacks. It's strength 6, AP 1 damage. Flash Gits in Goths actually wouldn't be terrible in melee.
I didn't realize Flash Gits had choppas. Never mind. That would be a real scary melee unit. So yeah, but that being said, remember we're playing like multiple attachments. You're not taking Flash Gits as Goths. You're going to take your Flash Gits as freebooters or something else. So Goths are just like incredible in melee. Their Warlord trait is +1 attack and wait, right? It's +1 attack and +1 armor penetration.
It's +1 attack, +1 armor penetration. Yeah.
Yeah. Keep in mind if Gaz is your warlord. Sorry, if Gaz is in your army, I believe he obligates himself to be the warlord. Does he have that rule?
I believe that he does.
Okay.
Yeah.
So even if he doesn't, if Gaz is in your army, you should probably make him your warlord because you can call the Great Wall. And then
Yep, if he's included, he has to be.
Cool. And then he's taking that warlord trait, which is great on him because Gaz's melee stats have not really changed. He's just as crumpy as he's ever been. And then their stratagem is 2 CP. When a core character fights, rather than exploding on 6s, you explode on 5s. So yeah, just like complete heinous melee nonsense. They could just blow past things. I think you're going to see a lot of Goth warlords, and by that I mean lots of lists are just going to bring Gaz. The Goth, like you're not giving anything up. The one thing you're giving up is their relic is like fine. It's not bad.
Yeah.
It's just like better relics.
Sure.
It does like some mortal wounds when you charge. It's
actually
when you pile in.
before you consolidate.
Sure.
After making your attacks on a 2-up D3 mortal wounds, and that's for one enemy unit, so it's really not great.
The joke is that you put your relics on war bosses, and war bosses kill everything they touch. So like you're not going to consolidate. Like there's nothing to do mortal wounds to. It's dead. You've already
by
fought.
War bosses, we mean beast bosses on Squigosaurs. But
yeah,
yes.
We'll talk about that in a second. Your other melee option is snake bites. Snake bites get +1 of wound on the charge for squig units. There's like 5 squig units, but if you want to bring a bunch of them, you're playing snake bites. It's beast bosses on Squigosaurs, knobs on Squigosaurs, boys on squigs, and the wagon. Snake bites make those units really good because +1 of wound is insane, as we've seen from Blood Angels.
The other half of their trait is also that weapons below strength 8 can't wound them except for on 4-up, which with the bonus to toughness doesn't really give you much.
Strength 6 and strength 7 weapons are -1 to wounds, and if people are getting bonuses to wound you with strength 5 weapons, sure.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to cover the 2 tricky ones, quote unquote, real quick, and then we're going to
go for it.
Talk about a couple other things. All right. So, blood axes, they can fall back and charge or shoot. Sure. And they have cover outside of 18 inches. More interestingly, their warlord trait is pick 3 units and pick 3 blood axe core units and redeploy them or put them into outflank. And their stratagem is pick a core unit that's within 3 inches.
It's not core. That is actually any blood axes unit.
Oh, all right. Never mind.
Be redeployed with the warlord strat.
Okay. That actually makes some interesting decisions there. But yeah, before game starts, pick 3 blood axes units, put them in outflank, or redeploy them. And then the other one is their stratagem is they can take things from the board edge, take the infantry on the board edge, take them off the table, put them back on the table later. You can do some tricky things with secondaries there. But if you're trying to kill stuff, you're either your shooty or melee ones are gonna be better. Evil Sons, they're super fast. So jump pack infantry, are just real fast in Evil Sons. And they maintain jump shoot jump as their stratagem. So that's great. Also, their relic
it has been changed. They no longer move as if it was the movement phase. It is now that they can make a normal move. So that was nerfed a little bit.
Yeah, that's actually been across the board. Everything that used to move as though it was the movement phase has been FAQ to be like you can't advance unless it says specifically you could. So they just put it there in plain writing. But jump shoot jump is still great, especially because you're jump shoot jumping on units that move 14 to 12 inches. Yeesh. And then their relic is can go on a vehicle, but doesn't have to, so you can still put it on a normal character. It's +2 inches of movement, and things in engagement range with that model fight last. And this can go on a kill rig, which we're going to talk about in just a little bit. All right, so secondaries. Orcs got a couple secondaries, but I think the only one that we really want to cover is the Green Tide.
Sure.
This is engaging all fronts, but with some limitations and some bonuses. So the limitation is you can only count infantry units that have 11 or more models in them. But the bonus is you only need 2 table quarters to score 3 points a turn. And if you get all 4, you can score 5. And it's the end of your turn, just like normal. This is just like the freest secondary ever if you build around it.
Yeah.
So you could just like take 2 11-man squig like grot units and hide them if your opponent doesn't have indirect fire or melee. You just hide them in the back corner of your table and you just like
That's free 15 points right there.
you get 15 points.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Realistically, what's more like your opponent's probably gonna be able to get to them, so you're gonna want to bring more than 2. But like, I've forgotten what's the jump pack orc infantry. It's just flown out of my brain.
Storm Boys.
Storm Boys.
Storm Boys.
Storm Boys.
Yep.
Evil Sun's Storm Boys. I believe move 20 inches when they advance. So sometimes they kill them. Sometimes they kill one of them now. It's on a 4-up. One of them dies. So you don't want to bring 11 mans. You want to bring 12 mans. But like you can bring a 12 man, move them 20 inches, bring another 12 man, move them 20 inches, bring another 12 man, stick it in deep strike, get all 4 table quarters for a turn. Next turn, bring it down to jump something, and you're just like, all right, it's 10 points. More realistically, your opponent probably has screened out the table edges by then. But like it's very easy to be like, turn 1, I score 5, and then for the rest of the game, I'm going to be to jumping and bringing things into deep strike with blood skulls, or like if you want to build around the secondary, you're just going to get 20 points or 15 points on it. So that's neat.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next up, Rob and I kind of did winners and losers. For the we kind of ranked all of the new stuff, and then for the old stuff, we just like did the big winners and big losers.
Yep.
So Rob, what's our losers from the new stuff?
Losers from the new stuff. I see your note there. Ben and I will agree that the Warboy is probably the loser of the new stuff.
Yeah, he doesn't make sense.
Yeah, by itself, it's not great. When you can take a kill rig and have it now be a vehicle, it's just not really worth taking a Warboy over a Weird Boy.
The other loser that I think we agree on is the Beast Boss. He's not like bad, but he only buffs Beast Naga stuff, and he's less customizable than a normal boss. So like, I don't know why you'd bring one. All right, the one we disagree on is the Naban Squig. He's like kind of like a minor combat character. I don't think he does enough. Rob, you think he's pretty good?
I think he is, especially in a situation like a doubles tournament. For example, this weekend, going to that doubles tournament, I'm going to be taking one because I've already got Gaz in the list, and I already have a Beast Boss on Squigosaur in the list. So if I want to get another big punchy melee character, the Naban Squig on the Smash a Squig can take a Warlord trait. He can take a Relic because he's a character. You can effectively make him as durable and almost as punchy as a Beast Boss on Squigosaur. Granted, he has just over half the wounds.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Stuff that's fine. Beast Naga boys, they're boys. They have almost the exact same rules, except that they're 1 strength higher. They have a 6-up of vulnerable save. They are eligible for a transhuman strat.
Yep.
But like they are slightly better than boys for slightly more cost. It's so close that it almost doesn't matter. The one thing though is that they can go in a kill rig, so that is probably why you'll see them. The boys riding the beast hogs. At first, when they came out, we thought they were incredible. We've both toned down our opinion to like they're fine. In snake bites, they hit unbelievably hard, but their bases are really big. And they only move 10 inches. They don't have an advance in charge.
And because they're cavalry, and despite their name are not beasts, they cannot move through buildings. So you really have to plan how you're going to move them. Otherwise, you end up bottlenecked real fast.
Yep. The other thing that's fine is like the pain boss. He's 10 points more than your already than your like your pain boy, the doctor. He does all the same things as the doctor, except that he also works on the hog riders. Unlike the beast boss, he's not locked to only working on beast snagga boys, so he can help out like normal boys or other characters or whatnot. It's more about like 10 points more. He takes up an HQ slot. He'll see some play. I don't think he's like a significant difference.
I think if you have the points and if you have the HQ slot, you take him over a pain boy, but he's not stellar.
All right, let's talk about the good stuff.
Yes.
All right. Let's talk about kill rigs.
Yeah, talk about the kill rigs, Ben.
All right, so kill rig is 190 points for a double casting psyker on a toughness 8 vehicle with 16 wounds, 3 up armor, 6 up invulnerable save. It has a flamethrower las cannon that gets more shot. And ramshackle, of course. How could I forget? It has a flamethrower las cannon that does more shots if he gets a psychic power off. As a character, he can take a warlord trait, although that warlord trait is locked in as one that like buffs the damage on squig jaws, so like kind of whatever. More interestingly, he could take a couple of the relics, like the one that makes things fight last from Evil Sons. Also, it has like a harpoon that things can't move out of 12 inches of it. That harpoon injuries are second category of like things that need FAQs. So currently it crashes flyers, which is like probably intentional, and that's fine because it only hits flyers and 6s. More problematic it's the ruling on the harpoon is if the harpoon hits you, or is it hits or wounds?
It's if it wounds.
Okay, if the harpoon wounds you, you cannot move outside of a foot of the kill rig. However,
sure,
if the kill rig harpoons you and then charges off in a different direction, I don't know what happens, and I don't think anyone else does.
It also only applies to non-Titanic vehicles and monsters.
Yeah.
So you're not going to have to worry about it with infantry or anything like that.
Yeah, I think it needs an FAQ. And then it also has like an indirect like lava shot that can cut movement speeds in half, which is like with the stratagem, which is like also really good. And also it fights not dissimilarly to a war boss. Actually, it fights I think it fights better than a war boss.
Yeah, it ends up coming out with a total of 14 attacks.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. It's really front loaded on like the amount of stuff it can do. It just like it shoots good. It's reasonably durable. It is a double caster. Like it's a demon.
I would
prince.
be convinced to take it if it was 30 points more.
It's a demon prince. Like a demon prince is a 200-point thing that attacks real good and double casts. This thing is a demon prince that fights way better than a demon prince, has multiple las cannon equivalent guns, fights better than a demon prince, has more toughness and more wounds than a demon prince. It's like the only thing that's got against it is its invulnerable save is 1 worse.
Sure.
It's absurd. Oh, also it's a transport. You can put
it's an open top transport.
It's an open top transport. It's also a raider. Admittedly, Beast Snagga boys just like don't have good guns, but like whatever. Like it's an open top transport psyker gun wielding, like las cannon wielding character that's also a knight in combat. Like GW
and takes up a lord of or heavy.
It's a heavy support. Slot. Like GW. Like what were you doing? Like what were you actually doing when you designed this thing? The only knock against it, the literal only knock against it, is that it does melt to anti-tank fire. So like melter guns and las cannons will still just murder it. But like whatever, it's 190 points. It's not the end of the world. Like it. I don't understand what happened when they designed this model. Oh, if we forgot to put in the losers, there's a version of this thing that doesn't have a psyker on top. And it's a loser because it's not this thing.
Yeah,
and that's pretty simple. All right, our other winner, Quigosaur bosses.
Yes.
The
beast boss on Quigosaur is probably the always take option.
Yeah.
As far as bosses are concerned, There's really no reason not to. It's 145 points. It moves 10 inches. It's a 2-up weapon skill. It's got strength 6, 7 toughness, 9 wounds, 5 attacks base, 4-up armor save with a 5-up invulnerable. It boosts itself with a +1 to its attacks. So even if it is -1, it's still going to be hitting on 2s. It boosts everything around it. It gets 3 additional attacks from its Squigosaur at strength 7, AP 3, 3 damage. Wound rolls of 6 inflict 3 mortal wounds instead.
Yeah. And you're just going to stack relics and warlord traits on top of this thing and a faction trait. So remember, snake bites, it's +1 to wound on the charge because it's a squig. And in Goth, it's +1 strength with 6s to hit double hitting. And this is probably when I should tell you all that ORKS received the patented Dark Eldar for every attack that didn't do damage to you, start over warlord trait. And you're just going to put it on this thing every time because it makes a million attacks and is also unkillable. Like it everything bounces off of it.
It's also
T7, 9 wounds, -1 damage taken, 5-up invulnerable save. There's a relic for +1 attack and a 5-up feel no pain that you're also going to always put in one of your Squigosaurs. And like all of a sudden, like the super murder succubi that we're all complaining about literally doesn't touch it. Like it bounces off. She does like 5 wounds to him and then he walks her across the table. Admittedly, he costs almost more than twice as many points as her, but like she doesn't actually hurt him. She just like bounces and dies, and then he just goes on his merry way and continues to crump everything he touches. I think this model is a mistake. He is way too cheap. He really is.
Yeah, but I am not going to complain. I spent a good portion of 8th not having something that hit like this. Yeah. I am more than happy to take it at 145 points, and they can FAQ that when they touch AdMech.
Oh yeah, I mean AdMech, like there are more egregious things in the game, but yeah, he needs to go up in points. I can't believe how tanky this thing is. Like outside of dedicated anti-tank fire, he's never dying. He's a character, so he doesn't really open himself up to dedicated anti-tank fire very often. I'm very grateful that orcs do not have a bodyguard unit, because he'd be a complete nightmare if they had a bodyguard unit.
Yeah,
I can't believe how good this model is. It's unbelievable to me how good this model is.
It is probably the best winner in data sheets for the entire codex.
I think it's one of the best data sheets. I think it's one of the best data sheets in the game.
Sure. I honestly like it more because of the flexibility than the named character version of it. The named character version of it is still great. Yeah. But yeah, just the standard beast boss on Squigosaur is something you are going to be seeing on the table in every orc list.
Yep. All right, so let's talk about the old stuff.
Yep.
We're not talking about every unit, obviously, because that would take forever. Yep. We're just going to talk real quick about winners and losers. So in losers, I have war bosses, not because they're bad, but because they're not writing Squigosaurs. And I can't imagine justifying taking a war boss when you could take a war boss and a Squigosaur.
Yes.
The other one I have is big units of mech guns. So mech guns don't split anymore. Also, their max size unit is 3. Also, they're still leadership 4 and have no leadership mechanics. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's all we really need to say about that.
Yep. Yeah, you just can't. A single mech gun is still fine. Like, they're still efficient. Sure. They're still good shooting. I would not be shocked to see lists that don't want to bring kill rig just go, and my heavy supports are 3 single mech gun units, and we'll see that. And they're fine.
Do smasher guns still do the it wounds on 2d6 speed toughness?
No.
They're just
they were given a flat strength 8. Yep.
Okay.
Bubble Chucka was switched up. It now has less random to it, but still pretty bad. The custom mega cannon is worth considering. I think that there are times that you will see people taking 3 of them in a unit and just having that one 3 model unit sitting in the back, laying down some fire, just because there's so many other threats in the book that they feel that people probably won't be going after them.
Yep. real quick about Lords of Wars. Morkanauts and Gorkanauts became Lords of War.
Yep.
It's vaguely interesting. They gained a bunch more runes. They became much murdery. They went up a little bit. I don't think that either of them are like see competitive play, but if you own one and you really want to play it, you don't have to feel bad about it anymore. Same can be said for Stampas. They went down like 300 points. It's just a lot about the Stampa that they went down 300 points, and I still don't think it's good, but like it's close.
Yeah.
All right. Our winners. Commandos. Commandos don't deep strike anymore. They now forward deploy. And you know, we've all played with and against forward deploying infantry. Having access to it is great. Every single thing with the mech keyword, they all just gained a ballistic skill.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you say that, but shock attack guns have the mech keyword. Chris?
Awesome for orc players?
Yeah, it's awesome for orc players.
Absolutely.
You know what else has the mech keyword?
Wazboom Blastajets.
Yeah. Yeah, the airplane with like 11 las cannons strapped to it.
Yeah, it was a model that was not going to see play last edition. Now there are definite reasons why you could consider taking it.
Yeah, and they're actually like very interesting blood axes, because if you're warlords of blood axe, you can just like put them all on the table. And if your opponent's like, I'm going first, you're like, and all of my airplanes are deep striking.
Yep.
All right. Every single buggy.
Every single one.
What the hell, GW?
I think that a lot of this is because after the October release, where they pushed the buggies and they said they were going to be really good, every player looked at them and said there are 2 that are worth taking and the rest are going to collect dust.
Yeah, so every buggy. So first of all, basically GW took all of the interesting custom jobs and threw them away, and then looked at every single buggy, gave it a couple more las cannon shots, and then shaved 30 points off of them. Like they're all dirt cheap. Like every single buggy just like gained more firepower and went down in points. There's 2 that I specifically want to talk about. We're gonna start with the less egregious one, which is the shock jump trackstas.
Sure.
They are basically the same. So they have 2 ballistic skill 3 las cannon shots. And then the big thing is that rockets went from assault 1 to heavy D3, so they can no longer teleport and then shoot rockets. So they can only shoot their like las cannon shock blaster thing if they teleport. More interestingly, they went down 25 points a model, and they were the good ones.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah, the only buggy that didn't go down in points was the Boondocka Snazwagon, and it didn't really get anything either.
So they have D3 shots at 8 neg 2 3 hitting on 5s, and then 2 shots at 8 neg 3 D6 doing mortal wounds on 6s, right? Hitting on 3s.
Mortal wound on 6, a self-inflicted mortal wound on a 1.
And we think that we're probably just taking these as freebooters. So like those were ballistic skill 2 las cannons. Like you're gonna shoot with them last after you pick off an infantry unit, and just like ballistic skill 2 las cannons for 85 points.
Yep.
Yeah, they're real good. They're so cheap. They're 85 points each.
Yeah.
But don't worry, they're not the best buggy, because squig buggies. Rob, what a squig buggy.
So a squig buggies went from being a model that you had to select the profile that you were shooting with. It was super complicated, blah blah blah. Now, their guns are effectively the same. It has a 36-inch assault 2d6 5 neg 2 2 that is indirect blast
and +1 to hit.
And +1 to hit. Then they also have an 18-inch with the same profile, but it's an assault D6, not getting the +1 to hit. Either way, the amount of indirect fire from these buggies, I believe, Ben, you compared it to
broadsides.
Yeah,
it's more indirect firepower than broadsides. They are actually cheaper than broadsides, and each model makes more indirect attacks than broadsides, at more damage than broadsides, at greater range than broadsides. And against big units like AdMech, they're just flat 18 attacks per model.
Yep.
And this is this is ORKS anti-admech tool because it's a strength 5. They have enough range that they can reach out and wallop whichever unit is not currently transhumans. You can't even make your units ignore AP 1 and 2 against them because you can call a speed wall and push all the guns to AP 3. And now they're making a unit of 3. They're 90 points each. Unit of 3 is 270 points. So it's not like, oh, you're going all into this. Like, now 270 points. Yep. Makes 54 attacks at 5 neg 3/2 against an admech squad. They just pick the whole thing up. They just kill it. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, absolutely. They are the winners.
I expect 3 of these in every list, and I 9 wouldn't shock me.
No, not at all. I
How does it
think
make
that
you
you're
feel,
gonna...
Chris?
I feel like I want to play orcs.
Yeah, right. My
Yeah,
goodness.
well,
I mean, like when I first started in the
about.
hobby, like one of the first like model that I like really tried to like paint well was a war boss back in the day, and then I bought like a truck and a box of BOYZ, and that's as far as I ever went with orcs.
Good. Yeah. Squig buggies just seem insane to me. I think mostly we're going to see them play as freebooters. But they have some play in evil signs because they can kind of move up, get their shorter range guns in range, and then get back out of the way.
Sure.
They can also move really far because they can advance and shoot, so they can like basically just like continually dodge your opponent's anti-tank guns and just like stay out of the way the whole game.
Yep.
All right, last unit I want to talk about is a classic units, which is all the planes. All the planes are great. They all went down in points. Blood Axes makes them very interesting because you can pick them back up. I'm not going to talk about every single one, but like, don't be shocked to see like Orc Air Forces doing reasonably.
Yeah, you will see them. You won't see as many Burnabombas as you had
Flying
been
Habit's
seeing.
gone, thank God.
They did lose the strat, but you are going to see all of the other ones seeing play. You probably will still even see Burnabombas seeing play.
Mm-hmm.
They're points efficient. They have a lot of output.
Okay. Now this is the last unit, which is Defcoptas. Defcoptas, their gun went to heavy 2d3 at 8 neg 2/3, still hitting on 5, so like it's a lot of rocket shots. And then their blades went from d3 attacks each at AP 0 to flat 3 attacks per, or 3 hit rolls per attack at AP 1. And in Goths, they go to strength 6. So a Goth Defcopta makes 9 attacks at 6 neg 1/1. 6 is double hitting. If you call WAAAAGH, +1 attack is +3 hit roll, so it's 12 attacks and 5 neg 1/1, or is it 6 neg 1/1 rather? And this is the unit that just like picks up tough 3 infantry. Like you just like walk them over to any Dark Eldar unit, and 3 of them just like spits out 36 attacks, exploding on 6s, 5s if you really need them to, and just like kill the whole thing by themselves. And they move 14 inches and fly. They're great.
And with the new kit coming out, their base size has been reduced, so you can actually fit them into tighter spots, fit more of them in footprint. All around, amazing boost to that unit.
Yeah. So let's hit some final thoughts. You can tell me if you agree or disagree with me, Rob. I feel like the infantry part of the Codex is good. It certainly got better, but I still don't feel like it's there. I feel like your broken lists are going to be a bunch of small vehicles, maybe some kill rigs, but I think like you're truly like this isn't okay lists are maybe a bunch of Defcopters and buggies.
Yeah, what it sounds like to me is that like, you know, like 3 big squads of BOYZ is still like a very solid core to build around, but you're gonna build just a bunch of like vehicles around it.
That's also possible.
Yeah, I don't think that you'll see full size units of BOYZ because Unstoppable Green Tide is gone, so they're not coming back. So once you lose the unit, you lose the unit.
Also, leadership immunity is gone. Like they just have to make leaderships like normal. Not that 9th edition leadership is as crippling as it used to be. You're not gonna like lose your whole squad, but like you're still gonna like lose some number of dudes. As far as power level goes, this book feels strong. There's a couple like the Squigosaur boss and the kill rig need to get toned down, and the Squig buggies probably also need a little bit of a points adjustment, but I don't think it's anywhere as egregious as Dark Eldar was. And I think orcs can play games with and against Dark Eldar and Sisters. I think they're like in that bracket. Like they're not AdMech level, but I think they're like right beneath them, which actually, in my opinion, makes them like a little bit too good. Either those 3 codexes need to go down, or every other codex needs to go up. Because like Necrons and Space Marines are not playing fair games against orcs. They are just not as efficient. But Rob, as an orc player, how do you like the codex, both from power level and flavor wise?
Power level wise, I really like it. They fixed a lot of issues that we had. There are a few units that I just personally love that I'm sad to see not get the same love in this edition. But I think power level wise, you're gonna see a lot more orcs in top 4s. Not that you weren't seeing them every couple of months, but I'd say that you're gonna see it consistently. As far as flavor is concerned, absolutely love this book. It feels real orky. Especially the non-competitive stuff. There's some just really goofy orky things for Crusade. But the secondaries for orcs for competitive feel very orky. I can get victory points for having a blob in a table quarter. I can get victory points for killing a unit in melee as long as I've killed more than I lost. It's overall, I think that this is a really good book. You have to play orcs differently than you were playing them for the last couple of years, but it's a great book.
Yeah, this book and the Necron book feel like they've been the 2 biggest departures from like how the army functions from their previous version. Like this book is like a rewrite. Like orcs are not the same as they were. They're totally different.
Yeah, if I tried to play a list that I was running a week ago using this new codex, it's going to fall flat on its face.
Yeah. All right, Chris, we've sort of been talking about orcs at you for a while. Any questions or comments for us?
No, I'm just excited for this book to really just get out into the wild, so people can really start utilizing it. I think this is gonna shake the game up a little bit, and I'm excited to see how many top 4s or top 10s it starts pulling off at GTs.
Yeah, and the other thing that kind of strikes me with this book is even with the really unhealthy AdMech meta right now, in the Squig Buggy, like this book has like the punish unit for the AdMech meta. Like if AdMech really just continue to be like this absurd dominant force, and they don't catch an FAQ that like brings them in line, like there will be orc lists that just like, I exist to smash AdMech. That is my purpose, and we'll see them take down GTs because they'll be in top 4s with like 4 AdMech lists, and every time the Squig Buggy unit shoots, they'll just like pick up an entire 20-man block.
Yep, and I am here for that.
Yeah, and the thing too about that is like, oh man, is this more? That means like they're just more broken. It's like they specifically punish hordes of either multi-wound or models that want to be hit with 1 damage weapons, or sorry, models that don't want to be hit by multi-damage weapons, and like there's not a lot of those around. So like their efficiency goes way down against not exactly the AdMech list. So it's not like they're also heinously punishing all the other lists. They're still very good. Like the indirect fire from them is extremely good and might need to get toned down anyways. But they are beating AdMech in a way that's not also just like going completely hilariously over the top of all the other lists, which is good.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see this book smashing AdMech and then doing the same smashing to Space Marines.
I actually do, but that's more of a Space Marines are bad. Like I can't imagine just Space Marine list surviving that many damage to AP3 indirect shots. Like you just pick up every mall on the table.
Sure. You're seeing a lot of like those Invictor suit lists.
Have you seen a Squigosaur? He just
I have.
Like, what's the Invictor suit do?
Let's not just okay, fine, sure.
Like it falls to pieces. But
we'll see how a Squigosaur actually performs on the table this weekend.
All right, I look next weekend. Or are you going to RTT this weekend too?
Because
the Squigosaur model's not out yet. Yeah, Squigosaur model's not out yet.
I am going to be kit bashing.
You're going to kit bash it, of course, because
if
for those of you who have not seen Rob's Orc army, everything's a grot. So his Squigosaur boss, I am sure, is going to be a gigantic squig with a grot with like a hammer or something silly on top of it. Because his entire army is grots. And it's great. I look forward to seeing I look forward to some of the beast snagger conversions. I think it'll be pretty fun.
Oh yeah, they'll end up pretty neat.
All right. So I think that's all I had to say. Chris, any questions before you close us out? Yeah. Yep. I agree.
Yeah. Well, Chris, Ben, thank you very much for having me on tonight. It was my pleasure to talk about orcs.
Yeah, it was good to have you. Thanks for usually hang out with us in chat, but it was good to have you on the show with us.
Mm-hmm.